Welcome back to Betwixt the Books. It is now March. Gretchen was super sick last month and I was moving, so we didn't have time to read something or do any homework. So we're here with an easier, just sit down chatty video. We're going to talk a bit about our anticipated releases of the year. It's very spring heavy just because just now we're starting to get announcements for things that are going to be coming out later in the year. There's a couple from the later in the year in the selection, but you'll notice that this is very spring 2026 heavy. And again, that's just because this is what we have access to of what's available as far as releases are concerned. We are going to start with two books that are on both of our lists, and then we're going to go back and forth and talk about ones that are individually interesting to us. Not surprisingly, there's probably going to be a heavy lean in romance on Gretchen's picks and a heavy lean in horror in my picks, but hopefully there's something for everybody in this video, and you either hear about something you didn't know was coming about or get excited about something new.
So first off, if you were anywhere on this channel in 2025, you will have seen Michaela and or I talking about T. Kingfisher's Sword Heart. We read this book together for a joint review. We absolutely loved it. It showed up on both of our best of the year lists. We loved this book. And it was set up to be like a standalone. And I remember telling Michaela, I was like, okay, but there's clearly maybe a sequel in here that we could do. But I don't know if anything has been announced about it. And I think it was literally the day after we finished reading it that T. Kingfisher announced a sequel called Daggerbound that will be out in August of this year. My blue sky skeet, what are we calling these things? That's probably the closest I've ever come to going viral on that site, because I was like the scream I scrimped. T. Kingfisher actually noticed me. It was crazy. So if you are not familiar with Sword Heart, obviously I'm not going to spoil anything. Go back and watch our review. But essentially, that is a romance between a woman and a sentient magical sword. There's a sword. A man pops out when you take the sword out. And the sword man here has friends who are also swords. And so this one is about Dervish, who is a character who shows up very briefly in Sword Heart, but is just a fantastic character. And some sort of love/fantasy adventure with another man named Edmund. So very excited to go back to this world. We loved so many of the little details. It was so so good. And also they run around and do science experiments and also hide bodies with the best non-binary lawyer who really just wants to do basic law and got caught up in a murder. It's so good. Go watch our review. But I'm so excited, and we definitely plan to do another joint review on this one.
Okay, so the next one is probably also not surprising to anyone who's been watching the channel for a while, because the final book in Katie Roberts' Dark Olympus series is going to be coming out in June. That is Shattered Gods. Much anticipated. We have been reading the entire series together. If somehow you were not on the train and don't know about this series, we have an entire playlist where we review every single book in the series, so you can go back and watch all of those. And then in June, we are finally going to get the climax of the entire thing. It is a trio poly romance between Hermes, Atlanta, and Circe. I'm not going to say much more than that because it would be super spoilers for the entire series. So in case you haven't read any of them, it's the climax. So yeah, go back and search Neon Gods. That is the very first book in the series. But we are going to finally find out what happens to all of our folks, including the big bad, the antagonist of the major political plots in that one. So yeah, highly anticipated from both of us. We are looking forward to it, and again, we will have a joint review of that when it comes out for you in June.
So moving into books that we are individually excited about, Michaela's correct. This is going to be extremely romance heavy. And the first one that I want to talk about is In My Tudor Era by Kate Bromley. This actually does come out this month, so hopefully I will be reading it soon. As Michaela said, I've been very ill. Um, so I really haven't been reading or doing anything. Um, I normally prefer my romance to be contemporary, but this one is one where a grad student named Lily, who's a grad student in a PhD program in psychology, which is hilarious to me because that's what my fiance is doing, ends up was visiting Hampton Court Palace, which is a place that I've been and was one of my favorite trips of all time because I am a Tudor buff. And she ends up transporting back in time to Tudor England, and everyone is calling her Catherine. So she has ended up like in the body of Catherine Howard, who is Henry VIII's fifth wife. She very famously is one of the ones that gets her head chopped off. And so it's really interesting because I feel like Tudor buffs may know Catherine Howard for the longest time, she was a teenager when she married Henry VIII, and he was older at that point. The reason that her head gets cut off is because she is having an affair with someone else, which is treason. And for the longest time, there was a lot of like basically slut shaming of Catherine Howard. And if you go to like Six, the musical, talking about how she really was like in very abusive sexual situations from a very young age, and like people finally dropping the Victorian veneer of like she was just like a stupid like teen flirt, when that's not even what the historical evidence really shows. Um, she was young and she made some dumb decisions, but that doesn't make her terrible. So I'm really interested in how this book is going to deal with that. It also just is one of my other loves. So I think it's an interesting time for this book. It's an interesting choice of wife, for this time travel romance, and I'm curious to see how it goes. So hopefully there will be a review not too far in the future for you guys.
On my list, I know we just talked about her, but T. Kingfisher also does have a new horror novella that's coming out this month. So I am going to talk about Wolfworm by T. Kingfisher. This is another like creepy Southern Gothic. So if you've seen our review of What Moves the Dead, which is kind of her most popular, I think, Gothic Southern horror book, we both loved that the year that it came out. This one follows a woman in STEM in 1899, Sonia Wilson, who is like a scientific illustrator. So she works with scientists at the time to illustrate whatever it is that they need for their books or papers. She normally has been working with her father, but when he passes away, she's sort of suddenly without work and purpose. When a entomologist reaches out to her to have her do illustrations of his collection, she joins him in his like big manor house in North Carolina. And as is common in gothic horrors, things are probably not what they seem. There's some sort of horror going on. From my understanding, there's like maybe a mad scientist bend to it. So I am interested, and we know that T. Kingfisher does this like style of book very well. So I also have an arc of this one, and will hopefully be reading it for you this month when it comes out. But yes, I'm very excited about
I have to say to Michaela's last book that if T. Kingfisher can write a horror novella, two things I individually hate, and put them together and make me love them, they're really good. So I'm excited to see Michaela's review of this. I'm going to take us back to Romancelandia with Enemies to Lovers by Alicia Rye. I have not read one of Alicia's books in a really long time. I actually did a mega review a number of years now on the channel where I reviewed two of her older series, that I just really loved. I loved them. And so I was really excited to see that she is doing a new series. I actually missed the first book, which was called Partners in Crime. But the next book, which is like a connected, it's not like a follow up, is Enemies to Lovers. And this is where a con woman and a lawman team up on an epic cross country road trip to save their families and each other. And so I really like it here that, the female main character here, I like how the description says, inherited her mama's calculating brain, her daddy's quick fingers, and a boatload of trauma that comes with being the eldest daughter of criminals. And then Krish, the male main character, um, is actually like a brainiac, but his FBI agent brother has gone missing and he's going to look for him. And there's like also maybe an up to no good ex who's like also on Shazal's trail. So I just like this. I like this as an idea. It seems fun. It seems different. I love when they put two people who have chemistry literally like if they're trapped in a car together. There's literally nowhere for them and their baggage to go. Um, and like I said, I really, really liked those series. Previously, I liked the way that she did characters and the romance. Also very spicy, so I don't know the spice content of this, but my goal before this comes out in April is to read Partners in Crime so that I am caught up. Will I? I don't know. But I'm excited for an author that I enjoy, but I haven't read stuff from in a while.
For me, bringing us back to the darkness and the horror. In April, the second book from Marcus Kluwer is coming out called The Caretaker. I read his first book doing that series where I was reading like the best horror books of 2024 last year, which was We Used to Live Here. That one was like maybe the most buzzy horror book of 2024. And that was a debut, which is really interesting. Usually debut horror doesn't get that much notice. It takes a couple of books for people to really get on the bandwagon with an author. The thing that I really loved about We Used to Live Here was there was like a mixed media sort of element where there were like articles or different little chunks that weren't part of the whole story, and each of those extra little bits had Morse code at the bottom of them that added to the story. So there was like a little bit of like an ARG element to that book. Just from the description of the second book, I think that's going to be a part of this as well. But the plot of The Caretaker is following a young woman, Macy, who decides to take a job off a Craigslist ad just to be a caretaker of a house for 3 days. So it's supposed to just be 3 days where she's house sitting, essentially. But it turns out that something incomprehensibly evil might dwell on the property. So we have another like supernatural horror set in the Pacific Northwest in the middle of the woods. So very similar vibes to the first book. I don't know if it is related to the first book. Like it doesn't seem to be like a series. But they could be in the way that Stephen King does his books where it's like set in the same universe, even if they aren't directly connected plot wise. So yes, I'm interested in that. I saw a lot of potential in that first book, even though it wasn't necessarily my favorite of the bunch that I read in the round, because there were some issues. But again, it was a debut, and I love seeing how authors grow. So I'm excited to see what he does in the next book.
Not intentionally. My next book comes out the same exact day as Enemies to Lovers. Don't know what that's going to look like here on the channel. Hopefully, I can do both of them at some point. But Beth O'Leary is coming out with a new book called The Name Game. Now, I am a little bit nervous about this because if you saw my review of Beth O'Leary's last book, Swept Away, I was thrown by the ending. Like it was really good and then it was just weird. And Beth O'Leary to me is one of those people who just writes such good character romances. I was really confused. So I'm a little nervous, but Beth O'Leary has a huge backlog of books. I've reviewed almost all of her books on the channel and I've mostly loved every single one. That one was weird. This one also seems to be, sometimes she does ones where she's like, these two have a lot of drama and they're trapped in a car together, like the road trip. Or she does like very cutesy, like bed and breakfast romances. This one is one where there is a man and a woman with the same name looking for a fresh start, only to discover they have landed the same job. And the same job is on a remote island in the United Kingdom. So they're both going out there to try to, they think they got the job to manage a farm shop. So I imagine sheep, lots of land. But yeah, they both have the name Charlie Jones. I am unclear how this could have possibly happened, if there was any type of a interview situation. Um, but, yeah, so the description on it is not basically much more than that. But it sounds cute, it sounds like a fun location, um, and I'm just really hopeful that whatever happened at the end of that last book will not happen again, because that was why it felt wildly out of character for an author I've read so many books out of. So, um, I am excited, I am hopeful, a little nervous, but review to come.
If you follow me on Blue Sky, which is okay if you don't, because most of what I do on there is talk about fan fiction, I did a skeet this past fall where I was talking about a book that had been released in the UK but had not been released in the US yet. That book is going to be coming out this spring. It is called Hunger by Choi Jin Young, and it has been translated from the Korean by Soje, I believe, or Soye. Um, it is a cult classic in Korea, so it was a book that was sort of underground and then got a lot of popularity after the fact from word of mouth. It follows a couple where the boyfriend dies, he's murdered by loan sharks. The girlfriend in this situation takes his body back to her apartment, and there's some cannibalism. From what I can see, it's described as a loving funeral. So it's going to have interesting discussions on death and how we do funerals and things like that. From what I can tell, it is also very anti-capitalist, anti like the insane like hustle culture that is part of career at the moment. There is a lot of like work really hard and have no money stuff, which is I'm sure also going to be reflective of the rest of the world. We also have that experience here in the US and other places. So it's described as both romantic and horrific. So I'm excited. It's so interesting. I love weird girl books where women snap in a way. And also, you know, fan of Korean literature. I have a background in that. So I'm so excited that that's finally going to be getting released here. And I did get an arc of it, so I'm excited to read it and hopefully review it for you guys. If you're in the UK, you have access to this right now. It's been out for a while for you guys. So I'm excited. It's going to be weird. We know how I like my weird books and my translated books, so that's what I'm here for.
So this next book is a little bit of an early birthday present for me because it comes out several days before my birthday. And this is Dearly Departed by Chip Pons. I saw just like the tagline on this and I was like, yep, this is mine. So this is an romance, where one of the romance leads is the is Hades, but former Hades. He's been like forced to retire, I guess. And now he's just a grumpy funeral director trying to get his godhood back. And then he's going by the name Hayden in this one. So Hades, Hayden, haha, cute. Um, and then this guy named Levi is a florist, and he moves in next door. So this is absolutely like a grumpy sunshine. It's got the Greek god angle on it, but different a little bit because he's not like the guy with all the power right now. The cover looks amazing. Um, so I'm just really here for it. Obviously, when we talk about Shattered Gods, I do like my Greek god romances, but in particular, I like when they, kind of turn them on their head. Um, so I'm very excited for my former Greek god Grumpy Sunshine Hades as funeral director. It just sounds great, so I'm excited.
My next pick is actually like a literary pick. It is Meet Me in the Garden by Nina LaCour. A couple of years ago, we did a video where we were like looking at books by authors who had been writing YA and then moved to writing adult, and we all read different books. It was a reading roundtable episode. I chose to read Nina LaCour's adult debut at that time, and I fell in love with it and her writing. She always writes queer, usually sapphic books. This is no different. This one is also a historical book, and apparently it is heavily inspired by her own Creole family history. It follows Odette in 1944 New Orleans, and her like very close cousin Delphine. Both of them have a secret. Odette is in love with a woman, and Delphine is in love with a white man. It then in the description skips ahead 5 years where Odette has been widowed, is a mother. She's living in Los Angeles, so it sort of follows the Great Migration that happened around that time period of a lot of like Black folks moving from down south to other parts of the country. And then she and Delphine have sort of fallen out of like how close they were originally, and Delphine is actually um, passing as white in California. So I'm sure there's going to be some discussions on race, as well as discussions on queerness and other things. It's just something that I loved Nina LaCour's writing, so I'm excited to see it. And I'm also always looking for queer historical books that are talking about the ways that queer people have survived, and in this case, also people of color have survived throughout history. I'm sure it's going to be great. I'm highly excited to read this one.
So this last book is literally here because I read the tagline on this and I thought that this was one of the most hilarious things I had ever heard. Now, listen, I read a lot of romance, right? So to a certain extent, romance is based on trope. So I'm not here going like, oh, I need innovation every single time. But also sometimes I like can like start to read a description and I'm like, oh, I can like guess the way that this is gonna go, or like the main like plot point of this, or like whatever. And so then I read From Wild Goose Chase by Sarah Adler. An antique dealer and his inconveniently irresistible new colleague must contend with an illicit stuffed goose and their sizzling attraction. And I just went, what? And then you continue. Antique store owner Callahan Leitner has an illegal taxidermy goose in his living room. Why? It's complicated, but it may end his career unless he finds a legitimate way to dispose of the bird ASAP. Unfortunately, there's an unexpected wrench in his plans, the frustrating, effervescent Annie O'Neill. Um, and apparently he has the goose. She finds out that he has the goose. It's this whole and I sent it to Michaela the second that I saw it because I was just like, of all of the things that I expected, I did not expect this. Um, so I have high hopes for ridiculousness content here. Um, it is very rare for a book to just like make me laugh from the description. Um, I love my ridiculous romance novels. That's kind of how I feel about You Deserve Each Other by Sarah Hogel, which is one of my favorite romance novels of all time. Um, and this one I was like, I'm getting similar vibes. So this one doesn't come out until July, but I'm already laughing, and I hope that when I read it, I will continue to laugh. Whether I do or not, I don't know. Check back in July, I'll let you know. But I am excited for an illegal taxidermied goose.
My last book also has to do with dead things. What a transition. It was just announced this week, Stephen Graham Jones's new book for this year, which is called Off the Reservation, is going to be coming out this fall in October, I believe. It is actually a follow-up to The Only Good Indians, which I didn't know was a series, and I don't know if it was intended to be a series, but he just decided that he could follow these characters some more. So the only survivor of The Only Good Indians, or the original characters in The Only Good Indians, Nate, is the protagonist of this one again. It's following a group of activists who are trying to repatriate the bones of a Blackfeet boy who was sent to an Indian boarding school and passed away there. I'm going to assume, just based on how The Only Good Indians went, that there's going to be some supernatural sort of ramifications that come with that. And that there will be some life or death situations based on like things not being treated properly, respected properly, based on Indigenous culture. I loved The Only Good Indians. I know that it's probably I was going to say before last year, where Buffalo Hunter x Hunter got a lot of hype, it was probably the most like buzzy Stephen Graham Jones book that there was. I think now Buffalo Hunter x Hunter probably has surpassed The Only Good Indians, but it was my first introduction to Stephen Graham Jones as an author, and I fell in love with his writing and have now read like a good portion of his backlist and most of his new releases since then. So I'm excited for this one. It I'm sure is also going to have to do with discussions on the not just the Indian boarding school stuff, which is obviously very close and not well known in like the general populace when it comes to like both American and Canadian history, but also having to do with the like theft of remains and other things from Indigenous peoples and the way that they are trying to get a lot of their cultural artifacts and the bodies of their ancestors back to them to be properly cared for. So I'm excited about that. And again, love a Stephen Graham Jones horror. Like you'll never hear me not love that. I don't think that he can miss. He just banger after banger from this guy. So yeah, I'm super excited about that. Not going to be able to see it until the fall. I think this one's the one that's like the farthest out on our entire list, but I am so excited for it. And if you didn't see the announcement for it, maybe here you go. There it is. There's going to be a follow up to the Indians, so I'm excited.
So, as Michaela said up top, we wanted to do this for a couple of reasons. One of them being that our lives individually got a little messy. I'm only just starting to like maybe get back into doing reviews. Another reason that we wanted to do this was because there's a lot of terrible, awful things going on in the world right now. And it's not that we don't know that. It's not that we aren't talking about that with ourselves, but here on our YouTube channel, we never shy away from having those types of conversations. But also today, we just wanted to, again, put some positivity into the world, talk about things that we are excited about. And so that was kind of two of the main forces with this video. If you are interested in some other books that we're highly anticipating, we will be releasing a reading roundtable later this month. The theme of that is books we expected to be 5 stars. So every roundtable participant is going to be reading a book that we go into thinking is going to be a 5-star book for us. It doesn't matter when it was published, so it could be whatever. But we thought it was going to just be like knocked out of the park. And then you will be able to tune in and see if that is actually what happens. So we are anticipating a lot of books this month. Hopefully getting back into reading a little bit more as I'm better. Michaela has, at least unpacked several of her boxes. And yeah, trying to, again, we will always continue to have conversations about different things going on in the world, but today just trying to feel a little bit of positivity in the world and share some things that we're excited about with you all. If you would like to drop recommendations for us that you're like, oh, there's another anticipating or like another new release this year that you think fits with more likely one of us, considering how different our lists were, please do put that down below. Otherwise, we will be back at least with that reading roundtable because we have participants who expect things from us. And then, whatever happens in the meantime happens. So take care of yourselves, everyone. That's the best we can do right now. And read if it makes you happy. Otherwise, just do what you can to keep your chin up. Thank you for watching. We'll see you next time. Bye.